Hi, I'm Larry and welcome to my studio. Today is going to be a watercolor study on painting an old fence or old wood. As I've said before, if you are unsure or you're still learning or whatever and you aren't sure how to paint either a technique or a texture or something, take the time to do a little study and practice what you do rather than using your masterpiece to experiment on. And you can use anything. You can use a new sheet of paper if you want. You can also use the back of something else. This was something I had done some little studies on. This is another way to do little studies. But it's better to take and practice on something that you don't care about before you start painting on something that you do care about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the basics of this, and I'll probably take time and break in between and do a little bit more and take pictures of the progression. This is not about the background, though I may put some background in later, or I'm thinking about doing it now just because. But the main focus is going to be on how to do texture. This is an old broken fence. I'm using, this is going to be a project sooner or later. I'm using this as kind of my reference. And it's always good to have reference. Take pictures, take lots of pictures. You have phones, you have cameras. Your computer will just be a wellspring of information and inspiration if you take enough pictures. So I'm just going to take, this is a little fence that was going down to the beach. And so right now what I'm looking for is where's the light coming from. Well, the light's coming in kind of from behind. The sides of the boards are the lightest, so that will be my lightest area. Everything else is going to have some kind of color on it. So this is where we're going to get started. Now I haven't drawn the whole thing in, and I may, because I'm looking at that, but I've got my fence drawn a little bit different here. I can have the sun coming in from this other direction. So, if I need to, I can put the sun here so that I remember. This is just a study, so I don't care if I've got something extraneous on there. Remember, we always start with our lightest colors and we work to our darkest colors. So our lightest colors are going to be the white of the paper. And so I'm going to leave some of this unpainted. The rest of it's going to get some kind of color on it. We work from the light area to the dark. I'm underpainting. This is just water that I'm putting on. You can do it this way by wetting the paper first. That way your paint will flow on a little bit better. Just wet the area you're going to work on first. And then underpaint. This was kind of a brownish fence, so I'm just going to pick up a little bit of burnt sienna. I've got some other colors down on my palette, and I'll show you my palette here. Okay, yeah, this is my old dirty palette. I work from that, but I'm going to be picking up some burnt sienna and just kind of mixing it with the mud here so it's not a real bright color, and I want to mix enough water in it that it's not too thick or dark. Okay, so then I'm just going to come in and just drop that in. I can move it with water. Pick it up. I can pick up some of that blue-gray that was on my palette too, and just throw that in there. Just kind of streak it in. This is an old wooden fence. It's seen better days is what it's seen. Now the sun's going to come here, so the light probably is not going to get to this part. So it may get to something down here. Just wiping it back. This is a clean paper towel. And I'm not worried about it. This modeling that you see, that's the paper. This is student grade paper. And sometimes it isn't the best of paper. Normally I will use a higher quality paper if I'm doing something that I really care about. Now this is on dry paper. I'm showing you two ways of doing this. This is dry paper, the same color. I'm just going to paint it on, just pick up some of that burnt sienna, mix it with what's there, put it on, and then just take and wet the paper with the paint. Just pull it down. I'm pulling it down because that's the grain of the wood. You want to paint with the grain or with the fur, you know, however it's going. Like if this were round, I would be doing some rounded strokes. That back one, I'll just come in with just wet on dry. So the paper is dry, the paint is wet, and just come in and add that. Now see, I'm going this way because this board is on its side, so the grain will be going in that direction. Just going to go over that because that's going to have, sun's going to come and hit there. The rest of this will have some shadow on it. You know, I've been doing this a long time, so I can kind of think on the fly. If you need to, have your reference material handy, and then look to see where things go. Look at shadows. Shadows are important. Shadows are what give you the depth in your painting. This little streak like that doesn't bother me because that can end up being wood grain. Okay, I'm going to take some of that mud on my palette, and I'm just mixing up kind of a gray, and my gray is usually my ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and water to make it lighter. Just put that on there. This one's kind of pointed away from the light. If you think it's too dark, though, remember that watercolor will dry lighter, but if you think it's too dark, just pick up a little bit while it's still wet. Okay, I'm going to let that dry now, and I'll be back in just a second. Alright, now I've let this dry pretty good. You could probably see that there's still some of that modeling on here from when it was wet. And like I said, this is the paper. Probably what has happened with this is that it's been rubbed up against something else. Some of this stuff goes in and out of my art bag, and so it will get a little messed up. But that's just added texture to this piece of wood, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. Also, some of the cheaper watercolor papers will do this. I just want to point this out so that you know what's, you know, when you see something like that, what it is and what the possible causes are. I had a teacher that said, get the best you can afford. And so when you're doing something you really care about, use the best paper you can afford. For study like this, the cheaper paper is fine. As long as it's 140 pound, you shouldn't have too many problems with it, but they do occur. Now, one of the things I want to point out, here I've got some color going into that light area. Again, I'm not worried about it. I've got just a damp brush here. I'm just going to wet that area. Just kind of go over several times with the wet brush, and then see if it'll lift. If it doesn't lift, again, this is old wood, so it's not a major problem. That'll dry a little bit lighter. Now we're going to be doing what's called a dry brush. Now, dry brush, what you need to do is, after you've rinsed your brush out and got the paint out of it, is that you're going to take your paper towel and you're going to just kind of dry it out, and then you'll spread the bristles like that. Now you can buy what's called a grass brush or a comb that automatically has that in there. Be a little bit careful with those because they're very evenly spaced and they can look too repetitive. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to pick up some color. This is going to be my ultramarine blue and my burnt sienna. A little water, just so I can get it going here. Now you can add any colors you want at this point in time. Okay, I'm just loading up my brush. I think I want a little more blue in that. Put this aside now. Just want to show you how I'm loading it. Again, I'm going to take my paper towel and just kind of suck out any extra water that might be in here, and I'll show you up here. What I'm going to do is that I'm just going to lightly pull across, and you can see how as it goes across, it leaves streaks, and that's what I want. So I'm going to come down. I can kind of jiggle my brush, and I'll make it kind of look like saw marks. Pull it down. You may have to reload a couple times because it doesn't have the water to help it flow off your brush. I'm just kind of barely touching this, and I'm just kind of wiggling my brush a little bit. Come here. I'm going to avoid that little strip because I want to do something different with that. But this is sideways, remember, so now this goes in a different direction. Can overlap. Gives it a little bit different texture. A little bit different look. You don't have to do all of it with that. I can take some just plain burnt sienna, which is what I'll be picking up over here. Same thing, I had wet my brush a little bit, so I take out some of that excess. And then come here. Maybe it would be better if I went up instead of down so you can see what I'm doing. Now, it doesn't have to be old wood that this works on. You can do this with if you're trying to do something that's a little more refined, you know, like a table or something like that, this technique will work to get the little fine lines in. Just pulling up. I can come in, just maybe use some green. I've got some sap green here. Loading my brush up. Drying it out, spreading the bristles. You know, could have been a green painted fence. So you've got some green paint kind of left over. Picking up some more of that green. Put it on some on here. You can put on as many colors or as few colors as you want. I would suggest not doing more than 1 or 2 layers before you let it dry, even though there's not a lot of water and you just need to let it dry for a couple of minutes. But you will need to let it dry, otherwise you're going to lose all of the little gaps that this dry brush is leaving. Go back, pick up a little bit of blue and burnt sienna and do that last little bit. And then I'll take a break, let this dry, drying out the brush a little bit. And then just, see when it doesn't have a lot of little streaks, it's the brush is too wet. So you dry it out, just squeeze it a little bit and then spread it out, and see there's the difference. Now that streak that was there before, that becomes part of the wood grain. You can even splatter this if you want to. Pick up some green. Dry it a little bit. Even after, if you've dried it after rinsing it out, if you go to pick up paint, you're also picking up water in the paint. So you want to get out any excess water. Now, when I take this next break, I'm going to come back in and put a couple more layers on so that I'm not going to be repetitive on this. It's the same thing. You know, it's what I'm doing right now is going to be the same thing. But I just want to get a few more layers on so you can kind of see where I'm going with this. And then I'll show you how to fix some of the, or finish up this. So I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. As you can see, I've worked a bit on it. I decided I did need some background because I have some light areas here and I need to have contrast. When you want something to look lighter, you need to have something darker around it. So I needed to put in some sky or just general stuff back here so that these lighter areas will show up when I'm done. So that's why I did that. It wasn't really part of this lesson, so I'm not too concerned about it. I've put a few more layers on, added a little more texture, and I forgot to mention that if you're having problems with the dry brush looking too solid, it may not necessarily be that your brush isn't dry enough. Pressure. You want to do very light pressure, because the harder that you press with your I'm picking up some paint here. The harder you press with your brush, the more it's going to be solid. So if I come up and and then just lightly go across it. You can see where that's solid, and then here, when I lighten the pressure, it starts to break up. So just remember those things. This is why we practice. This is why we do studies. Now I want to do the sides of these, and then I'm going to get into some of the detail. This is not going to be a perfect, perfect fence. This is where you get to go and try, and everything that you need to know, I've been showing you. But how you want to finish it, that's going to be up to you. I'm just bringing this over because I want to show you what I'm going to pick up. Now this is my yellow. Here, that's my sunshine color. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of my burnt sienna and just make a light golden color. That's all I'm going to do. Try not to knock over my studio. I need a new paper towel. Again, I'm going to just kind of lightly wipe that off. And here I'm just going to, now you can use a little bit smaller brush. I'm not too concerned here. But I'm just going to come down and bring that down. This old wood might have a little bit of a golden color. Wood, depending on the type of wood it is going to age differently. Just wetting my brush to get off some of the paint, and then just come across the top here. And while that's drying, I'm going to come over here to this edge here. You can mix up your ultramarine blue and some burnt sienna and mix it a little bit heavier, or if you have burnt umber will work. I'm just trying to make a dark color. I don't have black on my palette. Sometimes I'll use Payne's Gray because it tends to be a kind of a blue-gray color, but black for me, and this is a personal choice, but black for me tends to be a color killer. It's kind of a dead color. So again, I've mixed this dark color. Here, I'll put a little bit up there. So you can see it's a dark color. And I'm just going to spread that out. And over here, I'm just going to kind of make little, I'm just going to kind of touch and tap. Take a little more water out so it'll stay spread. And just tap, so you get kind of that rough edge that aged wood has. Maybe a little bit of that up here. Not too much. Just the ends of the grain of that wood. Now here comes the scary part. Most of this is in shadow, so I need to put a shadow color on it. You can use your ultramarine blue and some alizarin crimson to make a purple. All right, here's the purple I mixed up earlier when I was off camera. But you can take the ultramarine blue, some alizarin crimson, and mixing is like the biggest part of anything. And you want to mix up kind of this lavender purple color. It's a dark color. I'm going to add a little bit of water to that. Now all of this is dry, and I don't want to mess up all of my hard work here with the grain, but I do need to get shadows in. So I'm going to come in and I can test it up here. That's just about the value I want. A little bit more water. You do this once. You don't keep going back and forth over your painting. You just do this once and let it dry. Now it's a little scary because right now it looks like all that hard work you did is going away. But it's dry, and if you don't keep messing with it too much, most of it's going to stay. A little careful up there. And when it dries, you'll see that all of that color come through that you put on before. Watercolor is a transparent medium, and we need to use that transparency to our advantage. I'm just mixing up a bit more of the lavender color. Now I tell this to my students all the time. Don't worry about if you mix it perfectly to the same color that you had. Value is more important than the color. This has got a little shadow cast, so I'm just going to come and bring the shadow down there. Remember, it'll dry a little bit lighter. Following the grain. Same with this one. This has got a shadow coming on it too. Okay, once again I have to let this dry, and then when I come back we're going to start finishing this up and putting in some of the final grain and some of the texture and cracks, and we'll have some old wood. Be right back. Alright, this is dry. This is as much as I want to do for this video. But remember, you can take your time and you can do as much as you want to. There's one thing I do want to mention about shadows, is shadows are cool. So whenever you're working with shadows, they've got to have some of the cool part of your palette. And what I mean by that is that you need to have, let me bring my palette over here. Okay, here are my cool colors, my blues, my greens, there's some purples and some indigo there. And then on this side, I have my warm colors, my yellows, my oranges, my reds. Burnt sienna, burnt umber, those colors are considered an orange. So they're also in that warm side of your palette. And so when you're doing shadows, you want to make sure that you've got some of this blue, either blue or purple. And if you start looking at the world around you, you're going to see that the blues and the purples are in the shadows. Pay attention. Look at a sunny area and see the warmth in it. And then look in the cooler, in the shadow areas, and you'll see blues, you'll see purples. You might see some like a alizarin crimson, which is kind of a cool wine-colored red, as opposed to like cadmium red, which is more of an orange, warmer red. Okay, up to this point, I have been using this brush. This is my 3/4 inch flat angled brush. I use these all the time, my angle brushes. But now that I'm getting into detail, I'm going to switch down. This is again another angle brush. This is my 1/2 inch angle brush, and this little brush, this is called a liner brush. It's great for doing all kinds of little things. It is a tricky little brush to use, but once you get used to it, it is a great little brush. Now when I say tricky, I mean that it takes practice. So I'm going to bring this over here. I want to mix up some more dark. I'm going to take my ultramarine blue again. And this is burnt umber down here. If I can get it. I don't know what it is. It's probably just the pigments that they put in it. Burnt umber always tends to dry out a little chunky. What I'm trying to do is mix a dark color. If I can't get this, I'll just go over and pick up some of my burnt sienna, since I can't seem to get my burnt umber to work. Now I'm not going to mix as much water in with this because I want this to be dark, and I'm going to go in, start making some cracks. So here's how you load this little brush. You want to roll it around in there, just work it in, and then as you lift off, you're going to spin it in your fingers and pull up to get a nice point. Now I'm going to start from the bottom and work up. This is good for twigs, it's good for grasses and everything, but right now I just want to do some cracks in here. So I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to pull up. If you want it fatter, I kind of squish it down and then pull up. Okay, I'm going to get a little quiet here because it's kind of hard to do this and talk at the same time. I'm going to do something a little different there. Take that same color. Maybe make a knot in here. Up at the top, I can use this to kind of like pull down some little cracks at the top. You know how it gets. Don't make them all even. Now you can spend hours doing this. A lot of people get lost in detail. Trying to keep my head out of the way. But when I'm trying to do these long lines, I hold it way back here, and notice how I've got it between my fingers, so I kind of can move it with my fingers. A paintbrush is not a pencil, and you don't always have to hold it like a pencil. Cracks start and stop. I think there's another video I did that had some wood in it. That might have been the acrylic one. But the principle is the same. Okay, now let me switch to my, okay, this is my little 1/2" angle brush. I'm going to pick up that same color, that same dark color, and right here, wherever anything touches something, there's going to be a dark shadow. And when it goes in between something, there's going to be even more darkness because the light is being blocked. And this one's going to kind of make all of this dark down in here. Come back again over here, right where it touches. I'm just going to come down here with this, right along where this board is touching that board. Rinse my brush, and then just with water, just soften that. I can pull it out, pull with the grain, but leave it dark where it touches. Now I missed a little bit down here, so I'm going to add a little bit of that warm color here. as the sun comes through and hits it on the bottom. Come over on this side. I don't know if I can get this without having my hand or my head in the way. But again, I want to put a little bit of a shadow there to separate. You won't see quite as much of a defined line down here because this is in shadow, but you do need to get it a little bit darker. I'm just mixing up some more blue and some burnt sienna. And then I'm just going to pull that out. Lightly. Don't. Pressure is so important, whatever medium you're in. Okay, now I'm going to take my liner brush again, and I'm going to pick up, let me bring this over, pick up some orange and some burnt sienna and work it into that gold color that I had. Now I'll finish this off camera and I'll put the final thing on at the end here. But I can come in, create some of those lines over here. Now remember all that stuff we had going on? Don't even see it. Come over here, kind of tap. Pick up some of the dark color again. Come in here. Throw in some little lines. Now I'll do this one off camera. The lighter you can touch this, the thinner your lines are going to be. And I'll work on this one later too. But this is what you do. You stop and you take your time to figure out how you're going to create this. You know, it's much better to make your mistakes here. You know, those are learning experiences. And that way, when you finally do get to your masterpiece, and I say that because so many people think, oh my God, I've got to do this perfect straight out of the gate. No, you don't. But doing practice like this will at least give you a better chance of that accomplishment. So I hope that you had some fun doing this. I will finish this up and post it at the end. But that's it for doing some old wood, and I hope to get to the video because this will be on the test here. So thank you for watching. Stay safe. Check up on your neighbors, and most of all, keep painting. And I hope to see you again in class real soon. Thank you so much for watching.